All right, welcome back to part 2. This is going to be a little more in-depth editing or modifying your table. The view that we're looking at right now is what they call the Datasheet View. We're going to switch from Datasheet View to Design View. And there's 3 different ways you can do that. You can decide which way works best for you. The first way I'll show you is up here in the top left-hand corner on the ribbon in the Views group. It's a single button. You can't go wrong. This is the Design View button. So when you click the Design View button, our view changes to the Design View. And then the button by default changes back to the Datasheet View. So that's how you can change from Design View to Datasheet View there. The second way you can change is here on our table tab. You can right click on that table tab, and then we have, here's our 2 different views, Design View, and then right click and Datasheet View. So that's the second way. The third way is all the way down here in the bottom right hand corner. We have 2 view buttons, very similar to the ones that we had up here in the top right hand corner. Right now we're in Datasheet View. If we click this button, it'll change us to Design View. So Datasheet View, Design View. You figure out which one works best for you. There's no preferred way. My preferred way is whichever one is closest to my mouse. So when we look here in the Design View, we have our field names. And in the student guide, the study guide that's posted out here, I have you go through and enter all the field names first. Then we go back and we assign a data type to each of those field names. Is the way we did it any better than this way? I don't know that it's any better. It might be a little bit quicker. But if you're going to get everything done all at once, then you could just jump into Design View, enter your field names, data type, and knock those out that way. We also have a description field over here, which is optional. And all this is a place for you to put notes for you or anyone else who might be coming in here to do some work. So for example, if we want to put some notes in here for the member ID, we could put in here first and last initial plus 5-digit. Okay, that's what's going to make up our 7-digit member ID field. What those 5 digits are, I don't know. You can make those up, or we could make it 6-digit. We'll use first and last initial, and then the date that they signed up. The only issue with that would be, if you have 2 people with the same first and last initials, you wouldn't be allowed to have that duplicative ID number because this is a primary key field, and the primary key field does not allow duplicates. So first and last initial, and then you could use a random number generator or just go sequentially. Any other notes that you might have in here? Age, weight restrictions, height restrictions. Must be less than 8 feet tall. Weight must be less than 500 pounds. And these are, these would be like insurance restrictions or equipment restrictions or something of that nature. Must be 100 years old. And you're gonna see these used again, so I'm just putting it in here. Our activity level, we'll put in here. Please select Place select from drop down. So, you know, like I said, just little notes for you or anybody else who might be coming in. So we're going to come up here. We're going to select the field name for the member ID. And now we're going to come down here and we're going to take a look at these field properties. The field properties are just additional ways for you to modify each individual field to meet specific criteria. For example, remember I told you that the short field is limited to 255 characters. Well, you'll see that right here. The field size is 255 characters. And if you try to make it bigger, it'll tell you no, you can't. But we can make it smaller because I don't know anybody who's going to have a member ID more than 255 characters. Matter of fact, it's going to be 7 digits. So we can just put a 7 in there. So, or 7 characters, so that way it won't allow any more than those 7 characters. We drop down here, format. We may get into format a little bit later on. We're going to talk about input mask here in just a little bit. The caption is kind of a nickname for this field. Normally, the only time I put a caption in is when I have a field name that's actually more than one word. For example, this is member ID. So we can put a caption in. You put member ID with the space in between. And this is what will be displayed in the field header and on any forms that you create. It just is purely cosmetic. It has no effect on the field name itself. If you want to add a default value, for this we're going to put a default value that should give our users an idea of what should go in here. We'll just put an AA and then 5 # to indicate 2 letters and then 5 numbers. Validation rule. We're going to talk about validation rules here in just a little while once we get a little bit further down the list. Do we want to make this a required field? Yes, we do. So if it says no, you can either click this drop down button over here on the right side and select no, or you can just double click in that field and it'll change it from one option to the next. Are we going to allow 0 length? No, we're not. So double click in that field. You'll remember I said this is our primary key, and this is what enforces that. It's indexed, which means it's going to try and keep these in some sort of order so that when we search for something in here, it makes it easy to search for them. And it's also going to not allow duplicates. Now you could change this. There are other options. You could say yes, index, and allow duplicates, but that defeats the purpose of having a primary key. So we're going to leave this at yes, no duplicates. The Unicode compression, don't worry about that. IME mode, don't worry about that. Sentence mode, don't worry about that. We're not going to worry about that. The text align, we can change the text align because text align, depending on whether it's a number or a letter, will change the alignment. Numbers traditionally are aligned to the right, letters are aligned to the left. So if you just want to make sure that all of your fields are left aligned, then you, as you go in here and make your changes, you just change this from general to left. And I think that pretty much does it for the member ID fields. We'll come down here to the name field. 255 characters. Nobody has 255 characters in their last name, at least nobody that I know of. So we can change this to 50. And this is going to come into play later on when we start creating forms too. Format, we don't need to make any special formats for a name. We don't need an input mask for the name, but we do want a caption because we have a Pascal style field name. So we'll just make this last name with the space. No default value for the names, no validation rules. We do want to make it a required field and no 0 length. We're also going to come down and change the alignment to left. And that takes care of the last name field. First name field is going to be pretty much a mirror image of the last name field, but I don't think we need 50 characters for the first name, maybe 35. We'll drop down to the caption, first name with the space. Again, no default value, no validation rules. It is required, and we will not allow zero length. Change the alignment to left. Down to the department field, again, we don't need 255 characters of space. Some departments can get lengthy, so we'll allow them 50 characters. We don't need a format, an input mask. We don't need a caption for this because it's a single word field name. We are going to make it a required field, and no zero length. We'll change the alignment to left. See, we're getting into a pattern on a lot of these. The phone number is going to be a little bit different. We're not going to worry about the field size for this one. Actually, yeah, let's figure out how many spaces we need for a phone number. We got a parenthesis and then 3-digit area code, and then another parenthesis and then a space because spaces count, and then the first 3 and then a dash, right? And then the last 4. So that makes, by my count, 14. So we'll allow 14 spaces for the phone number. Now, the only time this might run into a problem is if you have, say, an overseas phone number, and that's something that you can explore and figure out when the time comes. But it's easy enough to come in here and change this field size. You'd have to add, I believe, 2 more, a 1 and then a plus. So no big deal there. We're not going to worry about a format, but we are going to apply an input mask. And all this does is it gives our users placeholders. It'll put the parentheses, placeholders, and the dash in that field for us. So all the users have to do is punch in the numbers. They don't have to worry about typing, the parenthesis or the dash. They just type in the numbers and let things roll. So to get into the input mask, when you click in this field, you'll see a build button shows up over here on the right side. When you click that build button, it's going to probably ask you to save your table first. Save it. And then it opens the input mask wizard. There are quite a few different input masks. The first one you'll see is a phone number. There's social security number, zip code, extensions, passwords. And what these do is, like I said, they give the user placeholders. So when you click in the try it field down here for the phone number, you'll see the parentheses and the dash is already there, and all you have to do is enter the numbers. Too easy. Same thing for social security number. If you want a social security number field, this is what they get. Okay, it's the 324. Too easy. There's a zip code, which is the 5+4 zip code. There's extensions, which gives you a phone number extension. There's passwords, so that when they enter a password into a field, all that shows up are asterisks. And then there's a few different time input masks. And again, it just depends on what format you want, and it shows you over here what it's going to look like. Short date is probably the most popular, so they just add 2 digits, and then a 4-digit year. But even that can be modified. So we're going to go back up to the phone number, and by selecting that one, and then we're going to click next. What you see up here in the top, the phone number, actually tells you a little bit more about this field. The 9s indicate that these numbers are optional. The 0s are required. And I can demonstrate that here in the try it field. If I just want to put in a 4-digit extension and leave the first 3 off, when I click next, if that's an acceptable entry, it'll move on to the next step in the input mask wizard. If it's not an acceptable entry, then you'll get this informational warning. It says the value you entered is inappropriate for the mask because the first 3 are required. So we can change that by simply changing these 0s to 9s. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can do the click and drag, or you can do put your insertion line up there and put your insertion line up there, and then hold down the shift key and then arrow over to select those 3 0s. And then you simply type 3 9s. So now when I come down here to the try it field, if I just put in the last 4 and click next, that's an acceptable entry. So that's how you can make those changes. This here is simply the placeholder, what shows up where the numbers are supposed to go. If you want a number sign instead of the underscore, then you can select the number sign. There's @ symbol, exclamation points, dollar signs, all kinds of different placeholders you can use for this. Or you can just use a blank space. Okay, no, this is no placeholder at all. So then you just put in the numbers. It still works the same. I'll go with the default underscore. That seems to work pretty well. And then when you click the next button, it wants to know how you want to store these phone numbers. You can store them with the 4 extra characters. All right, because 2 parentheses, and then remember I said a space is a character. Space takes up space. It is a character. And then the dash. So that's four extra characters per phone number if you store it this way. And if you're trying to save space on memory, because, well, you know, sometimes memory becomes valuable commodity. So if you want to save on memory, let's say you have a database with 1,000 names in it with their phone numbers. If you store it without the symbols, you're going to save 4,000 characters of space. So this is the preferred way. It's my preferred way. It's still going to show up with all the fancies because that's the input mask that we've applied. So I'm going to select or leave it at the without symbols. Click next, and that's all there is to it. Finish. So there's our 3 optional, and then 4 required. We're going to add a caption to this because it is again a Pascal cased field. So phone number with a space. We're going to make it a required field. We need a phone number. No on a 0 length and alignment left. There we go. The checkboxes, we don't really need to make any changes to the checkboxes. And you'll notice that now our field properties have changed because we're into a different data type. Each different data type has its own set of field properties. So you can see there's really not much to do with a checkbox. You have a caption, a little warning, default value for a checkbox. I suppose you could make one of the 2 a default, but I wouldn't really recommend it. And we don't really need to worry about the text alignment on these because, well, they're checkboxes. So we'll drop down, we'll skip the female checkbox, and we'll just drop down here to the height. Number fields by default are set up as integers. If you want to allow decimals, then it's best to change these to doubles. Okay, double will allow your decimals, and then you can change the decimal places from auto to 2. All right, just a simple double click in here scrolls it through the options, or you can select it and manually type a 2. We don't need an input mask. We don't need a caption. We don't need a default value, but it automatically puts one in there anyway, a 0. If you don't want that 0 to be in there, you can just delete it. So I'll delete this one, but I'll leave the rest of them just so you can see the difference. We are going to put a validation rule because remember we put a height comment in there. We said that members must be less than 8 feet tall. So I'm just going to select that and copy it because I'm going to need it here in just a minute. So our validation rule is real simple. Must be less than 96 inches. Okay, you don't have to put the inches or anything like that because the number entered into this field is going to be in inches. So just, 72, 68, whatever. But it must be less than 96 because 96 inches is 8 feet tall. And I'm just going to paste this in here. And I'll just make a minor modification. Members must be less than 8 feet tall. And what this is if they violate this validation rule, this is the error message that will pop up. We're going to make this a required field because we need to know how much they weigh and how tall they are and all that kind of good stuff. So required, yes. Text align, we're going to go left because again, we're going to do a number field, and I said numbers are going to be aligned to the right. We want everything to be aligned to the left, so go ahead and change that to left. Now we'll drop down to weight. We're going to change it as well to a double with 2 decimals. That way somebody's 120 1/4 pounds, we'll put 120.25 in there. So we'll allow that. No input mask, no caption, again, because it's a single word. I will leave the default value of 0 in here just so you can see the difference between height and weight. I took it out for that one. Validation rule, again, we have a restriction we're going to put on that, so I'm going to copy that description there. Our validation rule, simple, less than 500. Members must be less than 500 pounds due to, equipment restrictions. They might get injured if they weigh more than 500 pounds. And then we're going to paste that description in here, make a minor modification. Members must be less than 500 pounds. We're going to make this a required field, and we're going to change the alignment to left. The age field, again, we're going to change it to a double. We're going to allow 0 decimal places because people that say they're 59.5, no, you're 59. We're going to go with whole numbers for the age. Again, we don't need it. We're going to need an input mask. We don't need to worry about the caption. The default value is 0. A validation rule here again. We have our description up here, so we're going to copy that. And our validation rule less than 100, and it's an insurance thing, right? So, and we just paste our description in here and make a little modification. Members must be less than 100 years old. We're going to make this a required field, and the alignment left. The email address is a hyperlink. In the study guide that I have that goes along with this, I have a validation rule. To be honest with you, I've had some issues with this, but I'm willing to give it a try, see what happens here. If it doesn't work for this first time, then I'm not gonna waste a bunch of time trying it over and over and over again, because it's what's known as a like statement. So I'm gonna plug it in here for validation rule, because we want to make sure that their email address is, it's a valid, at least in format. We're not going to go out and actually check every email to make sure it's an active email, but we can check and make sure that the format is correct. So we're going to put inside parentheses like, and then open quotes, and we're going to put a couple wildcards in here. Asterisk and question mark are both wildcards. One's for characters, one's for numbers, essentially. And then we're going to put an @ symbol, because all emails have an @ symbol. And then we're going to put a question mark and an asterisk, again for number and letter. And then we'll put a dot with a question mark and an asterisk. Close those quotes, close that parenthesis. So all this says is make sure that whatever is entered in this field has some sort of letter or number followed by an @ symbol, and then some sort of letter or number followed by a period, followed by another letter or number. And we want to make sure that it is not, so we do an and and then in parentheses, not like. Email addresses cannot contain commas or semicolons, which are some of the more common errors that people will put in for their email addresses. So we'll put open quotes and then an asterisk, and then inside square brackets, because we're not going to allow commas or semicolons, and then close our square brackets. We're going to put another asterisk. Essentially what this means is we're not going to allow them to put in, say, a name, last name, comma, first name, or, something of that nature, or just something that they made up. And then we close those quotes, close those parentheses. Now, if this is wrong, when I come down here and click in the validation text, it'll come up and tell me. Let's say I forget this last closing quote. When I drop down here, it'll give me this, expression you entered has an invalid string. So it's up to you to figure out what exactly is wrong with that string. It just tells you that it's wrong. But when you click out of that field down into the validation text, if it doesn't give you any errors, then everything should be good to go. And we'll just put in here, please enter a valid email address. Are we going to make this required field? No, because not everybody has an email address. You get some of our older patrons, they may not have an email address, so we'll not make that a required field. Now we'll change the text alignment to left. Next is our goal. We made that a long text, so you'll see that there is no field size set for that because it's not based purely on the number of characters. It's based on memory size. So we'll allow about 1 GB of space for somebody who wants to get wordy with their goal. Oh, wait a minute. We forgot to add a caption to our email address. Email address with a space. All right, back down to the goal. Is the goal required? No, we're not going to make the goal required because, well, maybe not everybody has a specific goal that they want to work towards. Maybe they're just coming in to do a workout for, whatever. So we'll allow 0 length, and we are going to change the alignment to left. Next is our activity level. The activity level we're going to do a little bit differently. There's a couple different ways to do this, and I'll show you. I'll show you the. Well, I don't know that it's the preferred way, but it's a different way that's easier to change. I'll put it that way. In the study guide, it has it one way, but I'm going to show you a different way. So while we're here on the General tab, let's make this a required field. No 0 length, and we'll change the alignment to left. And we're going to add a caption because this is a 2-word field name. Activity level with the space. And now we're going to go to this Lookup tab here. We haven't looked at the Lookup tab yet, but we're going to look at it now. So short text by default are set up as text boxes, but there are a couple other options for you. There is a list box. What a list box will do is it's going to give you the list of everything you put as choices. So it can be a rather large box depending on how many choices you have. And then the person simply clicks on the option of their choice and it highlights that one. I'm not a big fan of list boxes. Maybe you are. But I prefer a combo box, which is more like a traditional drop-down, like this one. So we're going to select combo box for this. Now our next set of choices that we need to look at is where is it going to get the information for this combo box. And again, there's a couple different options for this. The first one is table or query, which is the one that we're going to do. Then you have value list. With value list, then you put your list options here in the row source. separated by a semicolon. So I'm going to put these in here just to demonstrate, and then I'll take them out. So you'll put low, moderate. See, I'm not putting any spaces in between them because they're going to be stacked. And then superhero, I put a space in that because it's one entry. Okay, so that's how you would set up a combo box with a value list. This would be if you had a list that's never going to change or rarely is going to change, because it's simple. It's real easy to just, as you're going through here, setting that up. The other option is what's known as, well, you do a field list, and it's going to pick options from the existing field. But to set up a table, real simple. We're going to save this, and now we're going to go to the Create tab, and we're going to create a new table. So we'll go to the Design, Table Design, and this is, again, real easy. We're going to put on our field name. The field name is going to be activity level, because that's what the drop down is going to be used for. And we're going to make this our primary key. And by making it a primary key, it's going to make sure that we don't duplicate exercises. In other words, you don't put push-ups in once and then go back later and put push-ups in again. That's the benefit of making it a primary key field. Short text field size, we'll go 50 on the field size. No input mask, we'll change the caption. Activity level with the space. And we don't need to really worry about whether it's a required field or any of that stuff. We'll change the alignment to left, because we're not really going to be looking at this table per se. Our member list table is going to be looking at this table to find its entries for the activity level field. Okay. So we'll save this and we'll call it activity level. So now we have two fields. We have our member list field and we have our activity list field. So we need to add our activities here in the activity level field. So we need to change it from Design View back to Datasheet View. And then we simply put in our exercises. Push-ups. Oops. Okay, so whatever exercises you have, maybe bike riding, because they can document anything in this database. So by adding those, we don't need to worry about saving the table now, because Access, when you change from one field to the next, it automatically saves. The only time you must save in Access is when you make a change to the database structure, either a table setup or a form setup or something of that nature. So we can close this without worrying about losing those field entries that we just put in there. So now we come down here to our row source and we click our drop down, and there's our two tables. So which of those two tables are we going to use as a source for activity level? Well, we're going to use the activity level table. Are we going to make this, I don't think we need to worry about the width or any of that, because it's a drop down list. So it shouldn't be a big issue. So we'll just leave that as it is. We'll switch back to the general tab. Again, check and make sure it's a required field. We can change our field size. I don't think any of our exercises are more than 50 characters. And then we'll go down to today's date. And I think we're going to change the name of today's date. We're going to change it to member date. Member date. And what this, I mean, is the date that the member came in and said, I want to be a member of your fitness group and all of that. So we'll come down here to the format, and we'll change the format to a short date. We're not going to put an input mask, and you'll see why here in just a minute. We'll change the caption because it's a 2-word field name. And we're going to add a default value. And the default value is going to be today's current date, or the date that the database is opened, that date, and then the specific time that this record is added. And the way you do that is you do it with the now function. So equals now, and then every function must have an arguments area. Arguments are contained within parentheses. So you put a left parenthesis, and there are no arguments for this function, so you close the arguments area with the right parenthesis. So every function must have an arguments area, but not every function has arguments. So it's simply equals now, open parenthesis, close parenthesis. That's going to be our default value. We'll make it a required field, which is going to be simple because it's going to automatically fill itself in. But this will prevent people from deleting the date. And we'll change our alignment to left. And that pretty much takes care of our table setup. I think we've covered everything. So let's go take a look at our table. Click the Design View button. It'll tell you have to save it because we just made changes. So there's our field, or our table. Okay, so let's put in our first user. There's our member ID with the default example. So we'll put BB1234 because, well, that's our person's initials and some random number. Bugs Bunny, he's in the training department. Phone number is 5, and as soon as you start typing, there's our input mask. We'll tab over. You can move from field to field with the tab and shift tab. Tab goes to the right, shift tab goes to the left. When you get to a checkbox, you can either use your mouse to click on that checkbox, or if you're a keyboard type of person, you can use the space bar to turn the checkboxes on and off. So Bugs is a male, and there you remember I took the default value out of the height, so it doesn't give us a 0 like the weight and the age do. But we'll put in a height. Let's say I fat finger this because, you know, Bugs is 69 inches tall. If I accidentally put 569, it comes up and says member must be less than 8 feet tall. So you click OK, you get rid of that, and you put in the actual height. Tab over to the weight. And you remember we said it must be less than 500. So if I fat finger that and put 455, it doesn't come back right away and tell me that there's an error, but it will. All right, I'm not sure why some fields do it right away and others don't, but that's just the way it is. But it's not going to let me go to the next record without correcting all my mistakes. So let's say Bugs is, 67, but I accidentally hit the 3. This one comes back right away and tells me that I made an error, so I have to fix that. So I'll say 67. Email address, I'll make a purposeful error here. I'll say bbunny, and I hit the @ symbol instead of the pound symbol instead of the @ symbol at mail.com. Go over to goal. He just wants to get fit. And his activity level, here's our drop down. click the drop down. Oh wait, those are exercises, not activity levels. So this is why I said using a table is a good idea as opposed to design view. Because with design view, or with a value list, I'd have to go back into design view and make changes. With a table lookup, all I have to do is open that table and get rid of what's there. I can just select it and delete it. Yes. Delete. Yes. Delete. Yes. Delete. Yes. And now for our activity level, remember our activity levels were low, moderate, high, and superhero. So real easy to change with a table. Again, we don't need to worry about saving that. We just move out of that last field. And now if we go to our activity level, we're going to have to refresh this because we made a change. So you click the refresh button, and you'll see it come up and said enter a valid email address. So there's one place it's going to ask you for the correct email address. But now we have our correct activity level. We'll say he's moderate. And there's our member date. Automatically adds our member date. It adds the date and time that it was entered. So now when I press tab to go down to my next new record, this is when I get my please enter a valid email address. It will not let you move on until you fix that email error. Now the problem with emails is if I click on this link, because remember we made this a hyperlink, if I click on that, all it's going to do is open my email and try and send an email to this person. So you can right click on that field to get in and make changes. Or you can simply tab back, right? Shift tab and go back to that field. So if I was here, I shift tab and go back. And then you just simply enter the new email address. And now when I press tab to move down to the new record, everything is good, okay? So I'm going to call it quits there because I think this has been a pretty long session. Again, design view, a lot of different changes you can make in design view. So get in there, have a look at them, the different data types and what the field properties are. There are some additional properties over here on the property sheet. We'll take a look at those more when we get into forms. There's really not much over here we need to mess with when setting up a table. All right. Matter of fact, we can just close that. And when you're done, you can close this table. And then come time to open it back up again, you just come over here, double click the option, and it opens it back up. All right, so with that, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.